Hello and welcome to the Agile Speaker. In Season 4, we're turning the spotlight onto the speakers. I want to capture stories, experiences, and helpful takeaways from clients I've worked with over the years, so you, our listeners, hear from the speakers themselves rather than advice from me. They come from a range of different sector, different sizes of business, different experience and background, but what connects them all is they've all taken to the stage, presented in the boardroom, pitched to investors, or have had to influence audiences in some way. As you'll hear, I had such a great time catching up with all of them. I hope you enjoy listening to our conversations and find their advice and top tips helpful. Today, I'm delighted to have Danny Helson, Head of Program Delivery and Investor Relations for Engage, Invest, Exploit, otherwise known as EIE, with me today. EIE is a technology investor readiness program and showcase delivered by the University of Edinburgh. Its aim is to launch more spin-out companies, attract startups, and support established tech businesses to seek investment and drive significant wealth creation and economic impact for Scotland. Danny, thanks so much for joining me. It's lovely to see you. How are you?
Very well, Marianne, and delighted to be here.
Lovely, good. So we first met in 2010, 12 years ago. I remember our meeting as clearly today as if it was yesterday, because unbeknownst to me, that meeting was the start of a whole new journey for me and my business. So until then, the majority of the work I've been doing was really with corporates. I was running company-wide programs or doing one-to-ones with clients like banks, accountancy firms, lawyers, land agents. And then one day I spoke at a breakfast networking event at one of those law firms in Edinburgh, and a member of the audience passed my details to you, and that opened up a whole new world of entrepreneurs, startups, scale-up businesses in Scotland. So at this point, can I ask you to tell us a little bit more about EIE? Can you give us the snapshot, the elevator pitch, please?
Well, EIE is the largest technology and investor showcase and investor readiness program outside London. It might even include London, and offers tech startups and scale-ups the opportunity to undergo an intensive program to make them investor ready. The program culminates in the EIE Investor Showcase Conference, where the cohort companies are brought together with international investors to pitch for investment from seed to Series A plus level.
Brilliant. And how many companies have taken part since it started?
Well, we began back in 2008, and we were actually in Edinburgh. We were based at the School of Informatics at the University of Edinburgh. In fact, we were across the road from the Informatics Forum. And at that point, EIE audience consisted of 64 people. All the investors we had on that first day could fit around our boardroom table, just about.
So it's 64 in total in the room, in total.
We had 16 academic projects, spin-out startup companies represented that day, and local investors that came in and listened to their pitches. The company presentations were all done on academic boards, so sort of an A0 size poster, and that was how we kicked it off. And that was April 2008. I do get asked quite often, actually, about why did we call it Engage, Invest, Exploit?
Yeah,
and people sometimes balk against the word exploit, but the reason for that was that there was not very much else happening at that time, and we had to get people's ear, get their attention.
Yeah,
and we wanted to engage them. We wanted them to invest in these projects that were coming out of the university, and then we looked at exploit. And if we look at the definition of exploit, it has very many positive connotations. So we actually put on our first leaflet that we issued out the definition of exploit as a noun, and it's advantage, progress, speed, success, furtherance, an enterprise or a project, carrying out execution, performance. So it does have many, many positive connotations. but also we knew it would have some degree of making the word spread out about what this event was. And it seems to have worked.
It certainly has. Brilliant. And I think all of that definition of the word has certainly made impact with a lot of the companies who have taken part. When we had that first meeting, you and I remember that you told me about this event. And I remember you said, the key piece of feedback that we're getting from the investors who come along was that the companies just were not articulating their business proposition, were they?
No. And as I say, it was very early days for what is seen in an awful lot of places now, but it was very early days for us. In 2009, we wanted to grow the event. So we went from our sort of 16 spin-out startup projects across the road to the ground floor of the Informatics Forum. We had 30 companies at that point, and we got some of them pitching up on the stage. And I have to say, they weren't prepared, and they couldn't communicate their value proposition properly. So from that point on, we said, right, it's not fair to put them up on the stage like this to a room full of people. Let's get them trained properly and do that. And that's where we started the conversation with yourself.
Yeah. What impact has EIE made on the companies who have been through the program in terms of investment raised and exits, that side?
Well, it's quite interesting. Now you've made me think about when we moved across the road to the Informatics Forum in 2008. We were very lucky to have Guy Kawasaki from Silicon Valley came over as the keynote speaker for that year. And of course, it created an awful lot of interest amongst the young tech community. And in the front row of the audience that year were a group of 5 people that went on to found FanDuel, what became FanDuel. They were actually exhibiting in various other guises at EIE that year, but later went on to become FanDuel. So FanDuel was an incredible story. In fact, the 5 founders were sitting in the office next door to us in Upton Tower for a while. So we saw some of the early late shifts that they ran through, the interesting obstacles that they overcame, and we kept in touch with them. So that was one of the companies that came through, and they became an early unicorn success in Edinburgh. Fantastic growth. Got up to over 2 billion in revenues. Just incredible story. Great team. So we had stories like that. I think FanDuel went on to be acquired by Flutter Entertainment in the end. Went through various situations. But also there was another company at that event that year that went on to become Kotikan, and that company in turn was acquired by the FanDuel team because they'd all worked so closely together.
Oh, right.
Good exit for Kotikan back in July, I think it was 2015.
Yeah.
More recently, there was a lot of news around Current Health that was acquired by Best Buy in November 2021. In fact, I first met Chris, I think the same year that I met you, when I think he was an undergrad at that point, but already had the entrepreneurial bug. And there was an awful lot of stuff going on in Edinburgh, not so much in other places. And so he and his friends from Glasgow would come over and engage with what was the Informatics Ventures Programme activity at that point.
Yeah.
And then he's gone from strength to strength.
He really has. And he when he took part in EIE, he had the opportunity to do an extended pitch, didn't he? So he got more airtime on the stage that year to panel, because I remember working with him one-to-one towards that. What's the total amount that's been raised by alumni companies so far?
Well, we've had over 540 companies now that have been through the program. That's unique companies. Several people have come back once or twice. We've also, when you mentioned Chris there, we did events down at EIE London. So we used to take about a dozen companies down to London each year as well. We've also done investor events over in Hong Kong and in Shenzhen. We did an event around the Commonwealth Games back in 2014 in Glasgow. We also did an event over at COP26 in Glasgow last November. That's 2021. And then we did an event at the London Stock Exchange in April 2022, which was terrific to get back to live events after the lockdown period. But the companies that have been through the program have raised over $1.5 billion in investment to date. So
Wow.
It's an incredible story.
It's a phenomenal story. It really is. It's absolutely phenomenal. So much has been achieved since that first meeting that we had, over the years. I've worked with you and the team at EIE to support all of those entrepreneurs. So that's 540 unique businesses, to help them to articulate that business story to investors, to create a pitch. And over the years, the program has, tweaked and refined and polished. And it might have been a 1-minute pitch, could have been a 3-minute pitch, might have been a longer pitch with questions to follow. But, it's all in helping them to be able to use those pitches day to day, but also at that main event, the conference that you delivered, where they could then exhibit, network, meet investors and start those conversations. And so much has been achieved. EIE has made, as you've just talked about, what a phenomenal impact you've had on so many people. And of course, built as a result an amazing alumni as a result of that as well. You just mentioned FanDuel. I remember them coming to do the after dinner, one of the speeches at the dinner for EIE a few years ago. And it is so inspiring and wonderfully motivating for everyone in that room to hear them talking about their story, having done exactly as you described, sitting there watching Guy Kawasaki in the Informatics Forum, to then being a unicorn. And extraordinary. I've really loved being involved from those early years. And yeah, we did a count up of the number of startup scale-ups that I've worked with, and it's well over 1,000. So you've just shown that the huge amount of those have been through EIE. Amazing.
Yeah, well, we've been based up here in Edinburgh, but we clearly draw a lot of the Scottish companies, but we've also drawn companies from across the UK, Europe, North America, Asia, even as far as Australia. We've had companies that have come through the program. So it's been phenomenal how we've extended our reach over the years. So we're really pleased with that. You just minded me there that a couple of companies that have had exits that came to mind there. There was a company called MLED that came out of Strathclyde. They got acquired by Facebook. I think I'm allowed to say that now. There was another company from Edinburgh that started off actually as an MSc summer project for some of the students here, 2 of the students here, that became 2 big years. And that again got acquired by Facebook. Another project that came out of an MSc summer project is a company called Krotos. And I bumped into the founder, Orpheus, recently, who tells me that he's not only involved with gaming and film, but he's also now got into TV work and is featured on Stranger Things. It is amazing. And I have to say, just have huge respect for these people. It's not an easy thing. They're very brave to take the step, and they've shown an awful lot of grit to actually make it a success. So every time you hear about when somebody does get a successful exit, it's a really good news story.
Yeah, it really is. It is so much hard work, so much drive. So as you know, Danny, I believe in the need to be agile across all the different situations that we're dealing with every day. So being able to be flexible, move from, it could be a one-to-one meeting with an investor to delivering something on stage, to having a meeting, management team talking to a group of investors, being able to deliver the message and personality, whether it's formal or informal, small group, large group, because every single one of those might present an opportunity to the person or to the company. So with that definition in mind, how does EIE, the Investor Readiness Program, support founders and CEOs to be agile?
Well, this has been something that you've helped us with greatly over the years, Marianne. And we've been polishing this and chipping away to get to the real nub of what we're trying to get them to do. So what we really want the companies to do is to understand their value proposition and then tailor each presentation that they do for the right audience, the specific audience that they're dealing with, whether that is somebody in the elevator or whether it is a proper investor meeting that they're having. And we know that honing an elevator pitch is no small things. But the idea is that we give the companies tools that they can take forward. And importantly, within that is the ability to be flexible with their presentations and not formulaic. We met a number of companies a couple of years ago that had learnt their pitches by rote and were completely derailed if somebody interrupted them. They couldn't do a 2-minute pitch or a 6-minute pitch. It had to be a 4-minute pitch and had no flexibility built into this at all. And that's not what we're about. We want to give the companies the tools to really understand how to talk to the audience that's in front of them at that particular time. But we also want to help them build networks because I think it's a Steve Jobs comment where he said, you never know how all the dots join up until you look back. So the networking element of all the events that we do is really, really critical. And sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. This is the beginning of what we call a dating process. And some people you get on with and some people you don't. But we've had various instances where an investor or an entrepreneur, fellow entrepreneur even, has met somebody at an EIE event. And then it may be several years later before that results in an investment or somebody joining the team.
Yeah, that's so true. I always remember that story about Leah Hutchins from Appointed. Yeah. And I remember she was the first person of the day at the conference at the Assembly Rooms in Edinburgh many years ago. And she was the first 1-minute pitch of the day. And Gareth Williams was in the audience. He was from Skyscanner. He was in the audience and watched her pitch and clearly just kept an eye on what the company did, didn't he? Yeah,
and her. Yeah, so I think he'd seen something. I'll let Gareth, you can interview Gareth one day and he'll tell you his side of the story. But that got her on his radar.
Yeah.
And then that resulted in.
And then he invested a couple of years later, I think, didn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
That was lovely working with Leah, and it's great to see how she's gone from strength to strength. But I do remember her saying that when she had to go up on the stage and do a 1-minute pitch, she was absolutely terrified. But despite being absolutely terrified, that pitch bore fruit for her.
Yeah.
Down the track.
Yeah, so true. It's been, I think, the real strength of the program is, what you've provided with the training, the workshops that everybody gets to go through, and then that cohort effect, the network that they are able to grow through meeting each other, the other founders, which is really powerful for them. We saw that just a few weeks ago at one of the events you delivered, but also then meeting those investors and building those relationships. And as you say, being able to be agile about not just suddenly point and shoot your elevator pitch at somebody, but be able to deliver in a very conversational manner, relaxed, and stimulate the questions from the other person.
And listening skills being really important with that as well. Listen to what you're being told. You don't have to take forward everything you're told, but listen to it because it can help you. I mean, one of the things that's also come out over the years is that when we talk about focusing on what is their value proposition, and that's a piece that you've really, really helped us with. We have had some companies sort of say, actually, now I've been through the program and on reflection, I think we've got our ladder up against the wrong wall. So we're going to pull out of the process for now and review it. And so it's been very, very beneficial. Not just in terms of getting people securing investment, but making them really think about, are they doing the right thing?
And I think something that I see from my point of view, when we've had events, the sessions that I've done where we have smaller groups, it's much easier for everybody to talk to each other and have that peer-to-peer feedback. You see a huge impact between the companies of each other helping each other, saying, I don't quite get it, talk to me a bit more. And they all really support each other and give each other different ideas. And that's a huge benefit because it means they have got different audiences, different backgrounds right there in the room in a very comfortable place to be able to talk about those things.
Yes, we try and build not only with their sort of fellow cohort companies, but with the other external entrepreneurs that we bring in to help us with the process. We try and have an environment of constructive friend, if I can put it that. We're all there hoping to help each other, but you've got to be honest and straightforward sometimes. Yep. So sometimes that can be a bit brutal, but it's a constructive process, not destructive at all. But it's phenomenally important that drawing on the expertise of people that have been there and done it is very strong. But also the smaller focus groups is much, much easier for people to get the maximum benefit out of it.
Exactly. So thinking about the impact that this skill has had on all those 540 odd companies that have been through EIE, you meet those companies right from the start. It might be from that very first 1-minute pitch film they've sent in within the application, or maybe even a conversation you've had with them at an event and they're asking you about applying. You also often sit in the workshops where I'm delivering. So you see them through that part of the journey as well. And then you see them on stage or the Zoom video that's delivered at the event. What difference have you seen, or what impact have you experienced with those companies that EIE supported through, that full journey that you're watching?
Well, it's varied, as you might imagine. We're dealing with companies that are seed through to Series A and Series A plus. So as they're getting towards the more Series A, you would hope they were better at pitching their ideas for investment. But I'd say you get good and bad at all levels. And on the main, over the years, I think the standard has gone up. Sometimes we are told it's too polished. But what we try and do is empower people to deliver the pitch with their own voices. I don't want that to sound trite at all, but it's very hard not being yourself. It's a lot of extra work. So we try and give people the tools to be able to deliver the pitch their way. The peer learning does help this, and the cohort does help support this. There are some people that need a bit of extra work, so there may be extra offline training, if I can put it that way, just to get them up to the standard that we would want. And there are other people that just need very little handling at all. So it's horses for courses across the programs that we run, and giving attention where it's needed.
Yeah, and the goal being to really make sure that they are able to cope whatever happens. To be able to be nimble, to be agile, to feel they've got confidence in their message. And I think a lot of that feedback they get, that getting an objective perspective on what they're saying, how they say it, is incredibly useful to them. But yes, we've always tried to make sure that they're using their conversational style, haven't we? Making sure it is their voice coming through in every pitch.
Yes, it takes a layer of stress off. If you can talk your own way, then you don't have to put on this act of somebody else's presentation, and it just takes a degree of nervousness away from you.
Yeah.
And so in terms of presentations over the years, and this is one of the reasons why we keep developing the training programs that we do, inevitably the human element creeps into things. We've had people doing fantastic pitches. Because of the adrenaline, they might finish a bit early, and then with a rush of blood, they say something stupid and undo all the good work that they've done up to that point. And it's not nice to see, but it does happen. And so we try and develop the programs to ensure that doesn't happen. On a more positive note, I did see an absolutely excellent presentation a few years ago from a gentleman called Tom Mean from Cisco. He was actually doing a presentation at a demo day for one of the accelerators we were involved with. And just as he was about to start his presentation, all the AV went offline. So no slides, no microphone. And there he was in the middle of the room, just started his presentation. He didn't miss a beat, not a beat, and just carried on, delivered a very engaging presentation all the way through. The AV got rectified just towards the end. And he said, "You don't need to worry about the slides or anything now." And indeed we didn't, because he had captured everything within the presentation itself. And so I do like using him as an example when I talk to various cohorts, because It was a brilliant example of somebody that just knew his subject and knew his topic, had painted the pictures that he wanted to relay to the audience brilliantly and didn't need any slides to help him do so. Even though they could supplement his presentation, they weren't required in order for him to do a fantastic job on the day.
Very well prepared. He kept calm and carried on.
Absolutely. Didn't even skip. Just went straight on. It was brilliant.
Brilliant. Yeah. And it comes right back to what we talk about all the time with the cohorts is, build the narrative, know your audience, build the narrative first. And once you've got your head around the narrative, everything else is nice to have, visuals and so on. But if you know that narrative and you know it's tailored towards the audience, and then you practiced it and you really know it inside out, then you should be able to do that if everything else fails.
Yeah. And of course, there'll be times when you're sitting with an investor having a meeting where you will need slides and you will need all those bits of information. But if you're in an elevator doing a pitch, you won't have that.
Exactly. You never know what's around the corner, so you've got to be prepped for it.
Yeah, and you've got to have that flexibility to be able to deal with things that come up, because things inevitably come up.
Brilliant. Okay, so I have asked everybody that I've chatted to in this season of the Agile Speaker Spotlight on the Speaker, I've asked everybody to share with us 3 takeaways, 3 top tips or tactics that you use when you've got something coming up that you're preparing for. It could be a workshop or a presentation or an event that you're facilitating for EIE. So do you have 3 top tips or tactics that have made an impact on you, or the things that you think about just as you're preparing for something?
Well, the things I think about are, I'm not sure about the impact. You'd have to ask the people listening. But the first thing is know your audience, who your audience is going to be, and to try and be concise when you're talking to them. I think it's also important to have notes with you, even if you don't use them. And there's an example of that. We did an event, one of the first live events when we came out of the lockdown scenario. Did a first live event, went through the whole day, no problem at all. Just came to close the event, and I forgot the name of the last person that I was due to introduce. Of course, that was challenging for me, but I was able, because I knew I had my notes with me, they were on my phone on the lectern, I was able to glance down, catch the name. It was just one of those little blips that happens to us all now and again. But there it was in front of me, and again, as far as the audience was concerned, no issue at all. As far as I was concerned, my heart rate went through the roof. But it was covered, and nobody noticed it. So have notes even if you don't use them.
Yeah.
And then the final bit would be practice, practice, practice. Keep practicing it, and say it in the voice you're going to use on the day for wherever you're going to use it. Practice, practice, practice.
Brilliant. Just as you said that, words came into my mind of a phrase that I've heard you use so many times over the years. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
a phrase that I've heard you use a lot. And it is that, there is a lot to work on, isn't there? And that practice, it just makes you think about, if you're training for a marathon, you don't just rock up on the day and think, well, let's see how this happens. Let's see how it goes.
No. And some people have done that, I suppose, but it makes life a lot easier if you've done the practice beforehand, and then the actual day is much, much easier for you.
Yeah.
But, keep practicing is what I would say. It's
been really super speaking to you, Danny. Thank you again so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Well, thank you, Marianne, not only for today, but for all you've done for EIE and the cohort companies over the years. All of the companies you and I have engaged with over this time have found your workshops invaluable. So thank you very, very much for all that.
Oh, that's very, very kind of you to say so. Thank you, Danny. If anybody listening would like to find out more about EIE, go to www.eie-invest.com. And finally, if you want to learn how to be a presenter and be agile across all of your critical communications, please go to www.mariannejohnston.co.uk for information on our courses or to get in touch. If you've enjoyed listening to Season 4 of The Agile Speaker, please rate and review the podcast. We love hearing your feedback. Many thanks.